ready to start here. If there's any way, what you'll probably do is zoom in and what we might do. I'm just trying to get my thought together, but maybe disconnected. If you can reshuffle the sequences, and I think what probably at some points the time may cause a little space in between. That way you can put it together. You may want to put some of the things I'm talking about before. Sequence reshuffle.
Just remember, when you stop it from recording, let it run for a while after they finish, because when it starts again, it goes back in the tape. So we want to make sure we don't erase anything.
Okay.
All right.
Now, what do you want me to do?
I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay, you ask me the question.
I think you're ready.
Am I supposed to smile?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, that was the thing about Rossi. He has such a nice smile.
Tell me about the material you cut your dies on. What type of material is this?
Well, this is the boilerplate that I was able to purchase from the Cooper Bessemer, and they would have this different thicknesses of steel that you could that they would use to make what they would call weldments. So they had a supply of steel, and I would go and buy this a piece of steel, which is a soft steel, and I could cut the dies on it. It would be satisfactory for using aluminum, to hammer aluminum on. And it was it was soft enough that you could cut it. There was a problem about it in that if the piece of steel wasn't thick enough and you hammered on it for a long time, even though you're hammering on aluminum, this would bow up a little bit. It was very important for the steel to be flat on the back side, because when you put it on the table, and you hammered on it and it wasn't level or flat and tight to the table, why you would have it would be dead. And it would.
What do you mean it would be dead?
Well, it means that your hammer wouldn't bounce. It would have to spring down until it hit the table, or it would well, it just wouldn't bounce, and it would tire mine out. That's why an anvil is good, because it's heavy and it will you can hammer it on it and it resists. It's heavy enough to resist, so you have to have a resistance.
If that would happen, could you fix the die? Could you
Well,
grind
you'd
off
have
the
to
back?
take it and grind off the back. You had to grind off the back and put it in a lather on a grinder and grind the back so that the back would be flat. Oh. So you had to have the back of it. This was. You can see that has been put in a lathe, and it is
And ground down.
it is flattened out. You put it in a lathe and make it so that it's flat. Now, if you have a low place, that it'll bridge over it. But
And what's
you
this?
see, if you put it on a grinder, sometimes you put on a magnetic chuck grinder, and the chuck grinder will pull this into a and make it flat, and then you grind it down. Then the magnetic chuck lets loose. Why, it'll still be hollow. So
You had a. I see down here you have a device. This is what is this?
well, that's a turntable, so that when you're when you cut it, you can swing your die.
Different positions.
Yeah, to get it.
All right, now, now the type of material you'll put the die on, you've described. It held up satisfactory for using aluminum. Would it hold up all right for any other material?
No, because one of the characteristics of all metal is when you work it, and hitting it would be one of the ways you work it. The metal work hardens, and the metal gets hard. As soon as you hammer it, it gets hard all the time.
Which metal? This?
No, the
or
aluminum. Or if you were using copper work hardens and silver work hardens, and the way that you have to work those materials, if you're like making a bowl or something, is you work the metal until it gets work hardened, and then you put it in you heat it until it comes up to, well, the correct temperature, and that
Does it make it softer again, or does it make
yeah, it anneals it. So
you didn't have to worry about those kind of things because
you don't have to do it on aluminum because you don't. The work hardening doesn't hurt it any. It only makes it better. You start with a very soft aluminum and you work it, it gets harder, but it doesn't get so hard that you have to anneal it.
And then you worked exclusively in aluminum.
I work exclusively in aluminum, and this die would not be good for another metal. Now, one time I wanted to try it, and I got a piece of copper and I hammered it into a ship die that I had. And when I was done, I had hammer marks in this die. So I had to recut the die. And the piece of, well,
with the aluminum though, how long, how many years, or how many times could you make a piece
innumerable time, but the problem is cleaning, and you build up an oxide when you hammer a piece of metal, the aluminum stretches, and when it stretches, it makes at the edge of the hammer mark, it moves on the metal, on the steel, and deposits a little bit of aluminum oxide. We call it a blue mark, because if you don't take that off, it will appear on the next one, and it also appears on the aluminum in the first place. You have a part of the blue mark on the aluminum and part of it on the die, and if you don't take it off the die, then you'll just accumulate blue marks on your piece. Now the aluminum oxide is hard.
How did you take the blue marks off the die? How do you do that?
You have to take it off with an abrasive.
Like what?
Like this. It was a fine abrasive. Well, if you use the fine abrasive, you destroy your die if you hit the edge of it. So what you need to preserve and to make it keep a die in good condition is the edge of the die, because when you
like the sharp corners or
the corner, which is what when you put the color on at the last, that's what keeps the color in, and it also gives sharpness and definition to the die.
Okay, let's go back then to the actual cutting the die. First of all, you had to have some design, and after you came up with a design, how did you get it onto the metal so that you could cut the die? Did you do it freehand, or did you draw it on the metal?
No, you put it on. You transferred it by carbon paper, and the first thing that you would do would be put on the die, on the metal, some kind of a coloring agent.
What would be the agent be?
You could use a copper sulfate, which would make copper sulfate dissolved in water would leave a copper color on it. Now you could also
Would that be something you could mark through or draw on?
draw
Or
on
does
so
it-
that your carbon paper, your line would show up on the, and so you
How
had
did you put it on in reverse, though? A die has to be in reverse, and so did you?
well, you have to make your drawing and then you have to reverse the drawing.
How would you get the drawing reversed?
Well,
Did you do it on tracing paper and turn it upside down, or?
yes, you can put it upside down, or you could use,
Just draw it in reverse.
no, you don't draw in reverse. But you can, if you have ever used carbon paper, you might get your carbon in upside down and find the carbon on the back of the thing you were drawing. Or if you put down two pieces of paper and you put your carbon upside down on under the second one, and then you trace.
Turn it back over and then you trace around it.
Well, if you trace over, you'll have the pattern in reverse on your second sheet, or on the back. If you don't have a second sheet, you'd have it on the back, and then you turn it over and draw it up. Put the
But then would you scribe through it so you could make a mark on the metal?
no.
How would you get it right onto the metal so you could use your tools
You
to
use
cut?
tracing part of paper.
Okay.
Tracing.
Put another piece of tracing paper down and do it.
Yes, that's right. You
What
do.
type of tools did you use to cut this stuff?
Well, I have these various tools.
What are they made out?
Well, they're made out of tool steel.
Tool steel? What's tool steel?
Oh, that's hardened steel, like any.
Did you have these tools made to your specifications? Did you make the tools?
No, I had. There was a tool company in town at the time called. Well, they have the designation on the RBT. Do you remember that, Roy? Did you ever see RBT? Do you know what RBT stands for? Rainey Brothers Tool.
Rainey Brothers Tool.
Yeah. Old Clyde Rainey was he would forge these out, and because they were a lot smaller than normally what they would make.
Did he make them especially for you?
Yeah, it made them special for me. Although you have this is a gouge.
What's this one?
Well, this would be a chisel, and this is the diamond point, because the cutting edge is on the diamond points. And of course, I would work these in myself and work and grind them, because when I wanted to make a very small line, a point on a chisel wouldn't hold up under the pressure, and so I would actually be making a very small chisel on the point of this tool, and I think you would have to get closer to see this, but you see. So actually,
I just thought I'd give you a chance.
and then these tools, when you want to go around a corner, you have to have clearance, so you would grind the tool so that it would be smaller behind the cutting edge, instead of being bigger behind the cutting edge as it would normally be. You had to grind it down so it was smaller behind the cutting edge, so when you would turn it like this, you can't turn it. If you get in a groove, you're cutting a groove, you can't turn it
Unless it's smaller behind.
unless it's smaller behind. So that's the reason.
Really what was happening, you had him make the tool that was hard, and then you continued to
Yeah,
shape the
then you
tool
work on it
for
afterwards.
your needs as you used it up.
That's right.
And how then do you actually cut the die? How would you do it?
Well, you just start out and well, I would normally start out with a tool that would make an edge like this if I wanted round, round, or if you had an edge that was sharp, I would cut it with a square cornered tool or a round cornered tool. But most of my things.
Show me how you would do it. You needed a little magnification?
Well, as you got older, you needed more magnification because one of the characteristics of concentrating and you're using both eyes, and you're getting down like this, and you're working cross-eyed all the time because your eyes are crossed because they're focused at a short range. Well, if you put a loop on, which I don't know what power they have. These are different powers. These glasses are different powers. I think this is, I don't know whether it's 10,
Well, show me how you would do it.
well, you have to get in focus, and of course you have to get in focus, and you have to have room for your hands underneath the thing, so
So it really doesn't take much pressure to cut through the metal with a sharp tool and the
if
hammer.
your tool is good and sharp, the biggest problem is to keep the tool biting into the metal and not sliding along the top. So I'm putting a lot of down pressure on the tool to make it bite into. Well, if you have a I don't know, something like I don't know whether I lend some of the tools to. Oh, here's one. See, now here's a chisel that I've cleared behind to make it smaller than the point. And if you'd go and make a, then you'd come this way to and you now this was it. Every chisel mark you make in the die appears on your final work, and it is and the chisel marks are important because they give character to the work. And
Why did you make...
if you had some mechanical way of cutting this metal, it would have a tool. It would have a tooled effect, but when you have a...
In other words, the die reflects the tools that you use. If you
Yeah,
use a
but
mechanical
that's right.
means,
Yeah, actually the die is has hammer marks. Has tool marks in it, so it has character. The bottom of the die has character, just like the hammered material outside, and it all has the right character. But if you would keep cleaning this die, you would lose the character if you got your abrasive in there. So if you had a hardened die, and I should have gone to hardened dies, then the dies would have kept in
original condition.
A hardened die would be one that after you cut it, then you made it hard?
Yeah,
Did you have to use different kind of metal to do that, or steel?
yeah, you have to have a tool steel to begin with. Instead of buying soft steel, you have you buy tool steel.
Did you ever consider doing that?
No, because I never considered, well, not too seriously, because
How often, if you didn't do it, how often would you, say, touch up a die, just like you're doing here now?
well, it depends on the workman, how careful he is when he's repoussing, and if he takes off the blue marks and he goes with his sandpaper and hits this edge, well, then you destroy the die, so you have to just come up to the edge all the time. And everything is worked as far as abrasive and cleaning is, you think of the finishing, and the finishing is all done in a certain direction. All the finishing is done in the horizontal
Direction.
direction. That's right, the horizontal direction.
The depth of the die, what was your concepts of how deep a die should be?
When I was making the original trays, there was an attempt to, on my part, to keep the dies as shallow as possible and get definition. Because if you were going to use the tray to set glasses on or anything, you didn't want them things to rock. So when you were done, you wanted to have a fairly flat surface. As things developed, and instead of making serving pieces, you made pieces for decoration to hang on the wall, or ashtrays and things like that. It doesn't make any difference how deep it was. And so, especially when you've gone into another metal which wasn't compatible with food. Aluminum's compatible with food. Copper and bronze are not compatible with food.
So you wouldn't want to use them for serving?
Well, you have to lacquer them to keep them from oxidizing and getting dark.
But your focus throughout
Aluminum, you don't have to.
your focus during your times of production was related to serving trays. It was not necessarily decorative pieces. They were
decorative, but they weren't
for
decorative only.
double surfaces.
And so the dies, I tried to keep them shallow, but you see, you have to have to get definition inside the pattern, you have to have different depths. And especially now here, this trunk is in front of the one behind it, so one has to be deeper than the other when it's crossing.
Once you have, working on a die, how would you tell that it was coming the way you wanted it? Would you take a little sample, or what would you do?
Yeah, you can take a sample anytime you want. Or you get me a piece of metal here.
That would be better. You can tell how it came out.
Yeah, you can tell the new chisel marks that I just put in there from the old ones, because they're a little different in color.
So you can just take a little sample as you go along and see how you're doing
You
it.
can take samples if you're in doubt. You can learn to read them, and you learn to read and think upside down, because it's all not only reversed as far as
Now this
the pattern
die,
is
this die has a border around it. Why did you elect to put a border around some of your dies?
because all the patterns I made to fit certain pieces of the finished work. And this I made for a tray that would be about 1.25 inches bigger than this. And that's, and I to make a finished piece, it's better to have a border. It's more decorative for aesthetic reasons. Now in this particular piece, I use this part of the die, this one tree, to make a square server or a round plate. And if I do that, I would have to cut out the border. And by cutting out the border, you don't hammer on the border.
All right.
Now, if you want to hand that piece of cardboard right there.
This one?
Yeah. No.
Maybe it's this one.
There it is. We would bake this. Now that's shows you what you should repousse to miss where the border is. So when you would put this on the piece of aluminum, which was 12 inches square, put it on, and with a pencil you would mark around here and on the back, on the back, so then that you would have to repousse, hammer, and not come onto the mark, because if you came, you'd get a piece of the border there.
Okay, so you could modify the what you took off of your larger die, make a smaller section of it.
That's what we did. Now, it would, from a production angle, you ought to not have the border. It would just be much easier to not have the border, but if you wanted to use a part of the die, you had to have patterns. In fact, you had these patterns to mark on the aluminum, so you'd know where to hammer. But this is what, and it would be an advantage from a production angle to not have the border on.
How long would it take you to make a die like this one? How long?
Well, I would say about, well, in the first place, you have to get the metal prepared, and it has to be perfectly smooth. Not consider, after you have the metal prepared and you would have the drawing made and you transferred it on there, then I would say it would take about 3 days to do this.
Of working, just constantly working.
Yeah. But
Then the die would last, this lasted for 50 years
yeah,
with proper care and proper use.
yeah, if you give it the right care. One of the things that you have to fight is rust, because rust will tip the aluminum, and there's places here that this is
How do you
pitted.
protect it from rusting?
Well, you have to oil it.
In other words, when you're not using it, you'd put oil on it.
Yeah, you have to oil it. But they have a tendency to attack condensation, and if they attack condensation, then you'd have to work out.
During the course of your business, how many dies did you make?
Well, counting large and small ones, I would say that probably have 60, 65 or something like that, because you have small ones, you can see there's small ones. No, up above there.
Like that.
Yeah.
These would be specialty type.
That'd be specialty.
you made designs
The rotary
that
club.
you wanted to do, and then you also did make some designs for particular
Yeah.
organizations
Yeah,
if they wanted an
special
extra
order.
special order type of thing.
Now, let's see, what's that, there's a lettering on there. What's the lettering on there say, Tom?
This one was for.
Can't you read it backwards?
That's a Masonic order,
Yeah.
constituted hermitage.
Here, let me read it.
You can read backwards.
I'm used to thinking backwards. This is Hermitage Lodge number 810.
78.
1978, May, I don't know, something there I don't. It's April 7th, 1978. Hermitage Lodge number so and it was constituted in April 7th, 1978.
This is a list of patterns that you had. Which one of the patterns did you like the best?
Well, you listen, it's like asking which one of your children you like the best. You don't say that exactly, but you can't make a guy angry, so I can say that, sorry. I'll take that son. Because if you lay that piece of steel on here, you're liable to make a dent in it, and then you have to take it out. And the way you can take it out, and I think this is a little interesting, is that the back has to be flat, but the front doesn't have to be so flat. And if you have a scar on this pattern, you can take it out by with abrasives, and you might have a dent in the top, which is doesn't show when you hammer it because the hammer marks are all like that anyway.
It just kind of blends in.
It blends in, so you can repair the front. Sometimes even I would hammer it with hammer the steel with a flat hammer and forge the
pits or something out of it.
you could forge something out of it.
Okay.
But if you have it smooth, why then the surface under the aluminum has to be smooth. The back has to be straight.
Okay, we're gonna stop there.
Shape on there would just be ideal for making it along like this. So you'd go along like this, and you could practically make the limb in one cut. Now, when it got to be about that size, I think I have another tool that's almost the same as these.
Not cold.
Now, like this, you take a round and make the first cut with this, and then you go along with, well, I guess there's the even a wider tool, and the wider tool would go along, and you'd take this one side off, and so you had an edge up there that was round, but down here you worked it into.
And it's tapered it in.
Tapered it
Yeah.
in, and see, there's that tool was cutting that far there, and you get a tool mark that shows up down in here. you'd use,
Maybe something like this.
here, this is the one. Now that would give texture. I was never one to make much texture when Natal, for instance, would take something. He'd have a tool that he could just make texture with, and I had some tools in here like this that I would make a dye. I'll do this over on the edge. This way. I'll have to have a heavier hammer.
Yeah. Well,
But,
the idea is you could make it by pounding on it.
Well, this was a dye that I made with grain. So that would be the center of the grain, and then this was one that I made for snowflakes. But you could make a dye by driving it in, but this
or cutting or driving it in, or just
yeah,
whatever.
driving it in. But if you drove it in, then you had a tendency to well, you always have, if you drive something into the metal, you put a ridge on the outside, then you have to smooth it off because
Okay, well, I think we could. So you may want to readjust things.
well, if you're going to use that, do that, because we're going to have to set this up.
Do what?
Bolts in different holes, different holes, because you have to have the right hole. You have the clamp that fits the die. This makes it so you can hammer in there because the clamp is like that. This whole thing is an operation that I developed as far as Repousse concerned, because when I started, the only way to keep the aluminum on the top was with these wooden clamps, and when you use a wooden clamp, why, you have a tendency to hit the wooden clamp and you'd clamp. Well, it's gonna take too long.
No, let me have it. Have it right way, huh? What do you call this?
Well, it's a clamp. I don't know. It's a standard off. Well, then you take and you clamp the aluminum.
To the
But
die.
then you have to have a different table where you can get clamps underneath it.
So you develop your way of putting.
If you hammer something and you have a piece of dust under it, you get the tracks, the pattern of the dust on the piece.
What you looking for?
I'm looking for something that I can make a pencil mark on here so I know where to hammer.
You need a pencil. You need a pencil?
I need a pencil, of course.
I have a pencil. I have the pencil.
Okay.
What do you want? We've got to back up. We've got to get this thing through the. We'll get all the stuff together, and then we'll gonna have a dry run and then we'll redo it.
Okay.
Not too hard, it's not made to be super hard.
Now you know where the pattern is. Lay this. I can't see my mark. That far along? Okay, put it on.
All right, we're gonna start over again.
Okay.
We got all the stuff together that we need. And a hammer, you need the hammer. All right. That stuff over there, the circle you use, let's get it over here. All right. This stuff. And is that picking up a lot of, what type of a table do you use to repousse on?
Well, you have to have something heavy. And I've used this table, which is piece of steel.
Speak loud.
It's 2 inches, was 2 inches thick. Subsequently, I've got one over there, the table that's measure that.
That's 2 inches.
Is it 2 inches too?
So you have the steel that's 2 inches thick, and you
That's
have,
what I made the table out of. And then,
and what about the clamps?
well, they're probably made out of maple or oak. I think this happens to be oak, but
Did you find, you developed these tables to adjust to different dies, different sizes, give different holes in them, or different places to put the,
so you have to lift this up and put the bolts in different holes.
so it would fit the design.
Yeah.
Now, how would you adjust the die to the material? What would you do? In terms of how do you fit the metal to the design?
Well, you do, like I did.
We're doing it.
Oh, I see. Well,
We're doing it as if we never did it again.
Okay.
Just start over again. I had it so we went through it once.
Okay. Well, you.
How do you
Lay out.
Wait.
Okay.
Just give us a little space. How do you lay out the material so that it fits the pattern?
Well, you lay it out so that you know where the pattern is underneath the aluminum and you can't see it. So you take the piece of metal that you're going to put the pattern on and you lay it on, you take the pattern and you lay it on top, you see where the pattern would go on, and you see where the edge of the metal ought to be. So
Mark
you
it
mark
with a
the edge,
pencil.
you mark on the die the edge of the paper. Then you mark the hole on the piece of metal you're going to put it on.
To mark it.
Yes.
Okay, and then
I
what?
don't know why. Let's do it right. See those, okay, mark it there.
Mark it here. Okay.
Now when you put that on, you know where the pattern is.
We didn't do that right. Let's try again. Because you did it right the first time. We have to do the sequence. try to do it as if you've never done it. The pencil marks aren't there. You're trying to remember what we did. We want to have a sequence that doesn't.
Always go the same way. There's some.
You want to take these marks off?
No, the marks are on. All right. Now, ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. I want to put the pattern on a piece of aluminum. I have the piece of aluminum I want to put it on is this size with a hole, and I have the hole in it so I can look and see through the hole the pattern. And so I will mark on my die with a pencil the outline of where the metal goes. Then I put the same pattern on top of my piece of metal, and I make a, see, that's gone there so it won't move. That's where I want to hammer. Then I put that on top and line it up where
Okay.
no, not too far.
Why not too far?
Why, you don't put it too far because you have to reach over the bar with your hammer and hit your knuckle. One of the things about production is that the setup time takes more time than it does to make the thing, so you have to make, and since the this puts so much pressure on it, you can bend your bar instead of clamping down. It just brings the bar up in the middle, and you destroy the whole thing.
Okay, now what are you going to do next?
Now I'm going to going to hammer that, but we can take that off. Depending on what you're making and how much you might want to hold that corner down. So put a piece of aluminum or wood underneath the Now that's loose. You don't want, we'll just bring it down tight. Because the metal you hold the back of it solid and let the metal flow. When it stretches, it goes under those clamps. You ready? Now you can read that, because if it doesn't come shiny, you're not down at the bottom of the die. here and the metal is growing. That's stretched to the head of my hammer. I'm just trying to make sure that the die is in. It's one of the things that you have to learn. When your die is in. I think it's in, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Is there any time while you're doing this that you can pound with a rubber hammer or to flatten it down?
Yeah, if it's too big a piece, you can always it bulges up, which it does on a bigger one. Well,
What is this?
that's my stamp.
That's your trademark?
Yeah,
And what's it say on it?
Arthur Armour with an A. And you always put it in the pattern because otherwise it'll show from the front. You hit it with the edge of, because this is very hard, it would make a dent in your hammer. Now,
I don't.
Can I, wait a minute, can I move over there and get
Yeah.
more of a picture?
now see, I'm gonna I didn't get a good pattern. I'm gonna try to take it out and re-put the trademark on again.
Okay, go ahead.
Didn't do much better either. A little bit better.
Now let's take it apart so you can see the results of the making this piece.
You don't have to take the clear off, just pick it up.
And that's how it comes out. How did you do with it? How do you inspect the die and see how well you replicate it?
Well, it's down in everywhere,
Have to-
except right there. There's a part right there that doesn't in the bottom. So you don't get the texture doesn't appear on there. That when you finish it, that probably would disappear. That would go, but it isn't the best because that vein doesn't show up. That means that in that spot where it's high there, I should have hit it right there another time. But I didn't hit it enough times.
Is it possible to fix it?
It's possible to fix it, but not from an economic standpoint. You don't want to mess around with it. You can put as much time as it is to put the whole pattern on. You can try to fix it up and you might ruin it in the end, because if you don't have it in, why, you line it up where it's supposed to go there. Line. I think it dropped right in. No, I'm taking a chance, you see. Let me do it then. Get it?
You got some of it.
See, I was going too easy. And I was, there's a little jump. It didn't get it 100% in. You see, when you hit it once, then it has a tendency to go. And now that shows you the uneconomic point of it. Because that's bulgy up like that, and now you've got to take and hammer it down with the rubber hammer to get it flat. Because if it isn't flat, it wouldn't go back in anyway. So we'll let it go, or that you use trying to fix it up. You better start over again.
Okay.
But let me, when you start the finishing operation,
We're not ready for the finishing operation yet.
well, I know, but I'm saying that your error doesn't disappear somewhat when you start
Oh, I
to
see.
sand it.
When you sand it, it kind of adds a little texture of its
Yeah,
own,
yeah.
and you can deal with it
Smooth,
then.
yeah. Okay. That seems to be in. Now, if you want to make sure, then you put your clamps back on, and by the time you put your clamps back on, you've got so much time in it, you shouldn't be doing it. But I'll just do it.
Anyway. This made more marks on the leaf. That's all right, looks better.
Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Okay.
But again, I've got to straighten it again because it bulges, see? So you have to straighten it again.
Now we're ready to go through this process, the flattering. All right.
Is this a real run or is it a dry run?
Well, now that we got everything, it's going to work.
Okay,
Now you take this.
okay.
You tell me when you're ready.
Listen, if it's gonna be real, I can't smile and do all that, because we don't smile.
We got to talk about it first. Here we go.
We're going to take off this ridge that results from the hammering of the on the die. There's a ridge around there, and extend the hammering out big enough to put a pattern on.
What's that process called?
Well, this is really a flattering operation.
And how do you accomplish the flattering?
Well, he has the flatter and I have the sledge.
All right.
And turn on the air.
In terms, what preparation do you have? You mentioned about sanding.
Everything has to be
Don't do that yet.
clean and smooth. You can turn on the
Well,
air.
I have it turned off.
With-
How do you smooth up this?
With abrasive.
Show us how you do that, Roy.
You don't have to turn on the, there's air in there. There's air up there.
Okay. And this device provides air. Why do you want to have air?
Keep it clean.
Turn it on.
That's shooting air between.
All right. How do you do this process?
Well, he holds it. He has to keep the flattering tool parallel to the anvil. And it isn't easy. And it's got to be hit well, or it will tilt the tool. And if you tilt the tool, you get a bad mark.
Because I can do this now or not.
Okay. You have to get the feel of it. See, that was a bad mark. Good one. Fair.
What causes it to have it finished when you finally
Or
make it?
gets this down this ridge and gets this ridge down, and you're selling hammer marks. So you put them on. That's what you're selling, hammer stuff. You get the hammer marks free when you put the pattern on for in this area, and this hammer mark will show on the front that you put on the back. If you hammer from the front
with a hammer, well, you might get a bad mark and you might hit the pattern. This goes faster.
You do have, it does reflect through on the back. You just did it the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's the opposite direction because you can see what you're doing.
But
And this mark is nice and flat, and it doesn't have a roughness of the hammering like this has.
all right, the next step is what?
Lay it out, get it ready to cut.
And where do you do that?
Well, I have to go over to the cutter, take it and straighten
Where
it.
do you straighten it?
Over there.
Okay, you may need to just, this goes quick, so
Yeah. Move.
you can stand off to the side a little bit so she,
Alright, I'm gonna back up there. Wait a
okay.
second.
Well, you get away doing it. Closer,
I'll move out with
and then you might even lose some more of that window.
Okay.
Wait, before we, all right. I want
What
you to
you doing?
say what you get in here and
Well, we're straightening it with a rubber hammer.
why is, and why does it have to be straightened?
Well, you just have to keep everything straight so you can make a mark on for the layout of the pattern. Well, this happens to be pretty straight to begin with, so we don't have to straighten it
What
much.
type of surface do you use to straighten it?
Have a steel plate there with a piece of cardboard on the top. Lift it up.
Lift up the cardboard there. That's a steel plate.
Steel plate. Now, the reason that you have cardboard on there is to take care of this dust problem where you might be repoussing it, dust into it. So you have the cushion of the cardboard so that it doesn't fill it full of dust.
Then the rubber hammer doesn't cause any marks either, so.
Yeah.
Show us how you straighten it, Roy.
Now, if it was badly bent, you would put it on here and make it, hit it a few times and stretch the metal, because what you're trying to do is equalize the strain in the metal so when the metal becomes, the strain is equalized inside of the metal. So you move the metal, and you move the metal by the molecules in the metal by hitting it with the rubber hammer. Am I right, Roy?
Why
Go
don't you-
ahead, do it.
This is not a flat surface, it's a curved surface.
Yeah, that's right.
So
So
you wiggle the metal some, and you finally get it all kind of mixed together and flattened out again.
You hit it so that the molecules in the metal are moving out and equalizing themselves.
Go ahead. Roy.
Well, actually, you've moved it and made a bowl, started to make a bowl out of it. Now you go back and make it flat, and so that makes the molecules of the metal now that's good and stiff
And flat.
and flat. And if you had it flat and it wasn't stiff, then there was oil can in it. We call it oil canner. There'd be tensions inside there. But this relieves the tension. Putting it on there and back there, you relieve the tensions.
Okay, now what's the next step?
Now we're going to lay it out. Pattern. You see, it just is big enough.
Do you know it's in the center?
Well, we know it's in the center because we laid it out with the pattern. The begin place to put the metal on. You remember when we put it on the die? The bottom part of it?
was with the other pattern. Okay. Now, if we were going to do this in production, you would have two pieces. It'd be, the piece of metal would be twice as big as this, and you
In other
would
words, you'd have another one and you'd have another pattern on
it'd be
it.
over here, and you'd turn it out so you have a place to put your clamps and work.
Would it be upside down or on the same side?
Oh, it'd be on the same side. See, I just can't quite get that. It's close enough because the edge is going to be scalloped there. Okay. So, let me have.
What's the next step?
Next step is to cut it.
Where do you do that?
Well, you can get the surplus. If you had two, you'd cut them in two. Hit it. Stand on it. Okay. Now you can cut the corners off.
Just go slow.
Well, I think you want to be right there.
What type of a cutter is this?
Well, it's called a Beverly shearer, and it's very good. I cut it off like that. My light's in the wrong place. Because when you cut any metal, you have to have some place for the chip to go, or the scrap, and it resists you. But now, so you just this is a very good shear because you can pick up a small edge there, and you can follow the edge and you can pick it up. I'm not quite in the right position to do the best job, but now you see I'm skipping that place where the pattern wasn't big enough, and you can see that we can take care of that. If I was good at this, I would be able to just come around there fast. But I'm slow because I'm not skilled as I should be. And this isn't as easy as this thing, is it? This is something that you had always had a little problem with, wasn't it, Roy, with trimming?
Having trouble with the trimming, Roy?
You didn't like to do this.
Trick to it, you have to get on to it.
Now this edge is, if you would get a ragged edge on there, why it would show, and if you don't cut it off, your scribe mark would show.
You mean like right over here?
Pardon?
I can see the scribe mark right along there.
I think, well, there's a scribe mark here too. If you go inside the scribe mark, you really ought to go inside, or right on it. It won't make it, that's all right. Okay. Now we'll give it to Roy, and he'll put the edge on. This has a tendency to be rough, but when you hammer the edge, it moves the metal, and when you move the metal, it will smooth enough up enough that it won't make any difference. Come on, Roy.
to another location.
I'll bring your hand over.
Now, come over here, Dad, before you start now. What is the next process that you do?
This is decorating the edge.
And is there different ways of doing it, or?
Well, everybody has their... We used to hammer on the edge, but the this is a two process with two operations, and you know, the next operation will... This isn't perfect, Roy. We just...
Grease. Make it hard to hammer.
There's something in, there was a bad piece of metal there, wasn't it, Roy?
That there's grease on it or
Well,
something.
just, you won't be hitting that anyway, I don't think.
You want to keep the surface of your hammer
Everything
smooth?
has to be shiny, because that's when you, if you're, the tool's shiny, the mark will be shiny. Okay? You ready to go? Now the trick in this, according to Roy, is that you don't look at what you've done, you look where you're going to hit. You have to know the next mark. You don't look at the mark you made, you just have to make sure that, and he can... Close it up.
Okay, now you... Is this the way the finish is going to be?
No, that's half of it. Next one's over here.
Do we do it right here or over there?
Here.
Over there.
Okay.
I think I have everything. Except there was a little hammer.
Got
Maybe
everything you need,
Bring
Roy?
a little hammer, Roy.
This one?
Does this be all right? I guess.
Did Roy do this?
No, I would do this. This doesn't take any skill.
All right. You're going to put another type of finish, or this is another
Well,
process?
you'll do it, you just have to watch. This puts pressure on it, so it will... So we come between that, each mark.
Now, where did you, this particular tool, did you make that tool yourself?
Oh yes, you make that tool. That's... That tool makes a double mark. Like, where are you? Right here. Makes a double mark. So you have the contrast between a big mark and a little mark, a big mark and a little mark. That's what makes style, see? Another element of style, making the contrast between the big mark and the little mark, because we would finish it at this point and form it later, but I think we will do it, we'll form it now, Roy. Don't you think?
You can finish it afterwards, we can.
Well,
If you were going to finish it before you formed it, what would you do?
you would sand it and put it through the fire and color it. And clean it up. But if you...
Let's assume it's finished, and you're going to form it into a bowl.
I have a form.
It's kind of treacherous. What are you trying to do?
Hook it on that hook. Get it out of the way.
You'll end up getting that on your head.
This is a steel form. Do you want to use the wooden form first? Or? All right.
I don't remember, I've forgotten.
You mean you've forgotten something?
Maybe that. I guess that's right.
Yeah, well, I just put it right on top of this. Started in there with a rubber hammer.
This next step, you're using a wood form. Why are you using wood form?
Well, because it is less severe than the steel form, and this is a cast steel form. And to form it down in there, you might get a wrinkle. But if you put it down in different stages, the leather stage.
What do you mean by stages?
Well, you just put it part way. You work it half
In other
part
words,
way.
it looks like that this kind of has a frame in which it doesn't allow it to move. And so it keeps it in position while you're beginning to form it.
Well, that probably, the frame caused me, over a period of time, you lost, you worked it in there. That probably was originally how we formed them, but that's what happens when you form it in wood, then you destroy your form all the time. So we use the form, the wood form, to start it and finish it up with a steel form, which makes it constant. You used to go with wood forms, and now you go with steel forms because steel forms are better because they stay.
What type of a hammer do you use?
Well, you use a rubber hammer.
Hey, over here, Roy. There's some down here.
It's too flat. That's fine.
See, Roy wants to do this right.
Should have one round.
That's a good man.
Oh.
He didn't want to hammer there, it's got to let him clean it up.
Maybe you can do it with this.
There might be a hammer over there.
What hammers do you use to form this?
Well, you have a rubber hammer and you have the head in it, and you work the head off so that it has as narrow, so that it'll go in in the corner. The corner has to shrink. This has to shrink. It'll stretch in here some, but it has to shrink up the edge to form it. So you shrink it with a rubber hammer. And you hit it, you will have to have your rubber hammer has to go so it will go down somewhat in the corner. I think he wanted one that was cut off on that.
Round down there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right.
Can't find it.
There's.
See, we buy these heads and
You put them in there. Just
yeah.
unscrew this and stick them in there.
they had this box of heads like that.
Where would you get these heads?
Well, I got them made at a rubber factory down in the Butler. See, what he's trying to find one pretty much like that, but that's been destroyed. Is that right, Troy?
Yes.
That's ruined.
I think that's gonna work.
But you can do it with that.
All right, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. The metal is stretching in the middle, but it's shrinking out on the outside edge. That's the way all bowls have to be stretched in the middle and shrunk on the outside edge. And if you shrink them too fast, you get a fold. You get enough, Troy?
So you've just, at this point, you've kind of made the first phase of it. I want you to have it pretty well
One
shaped.
stage. This is where you have the other kind of hammer to it, Troy. This is what you call a female form, where you put it into the form.
How do you know when it's done?
Just hope it's not like this.
You look at it.
That's why you have some skill. That's what takes the skill, to know when it's done.
You think it's done?
Now straighten it, straighten it.
Level it now, or straighten
What?
it.
How do you-
Straighten it.
How do you do
let-
that?
Go over there and straighten it, Roy. He thinks it's easy. My son thinks it's just simple. See? You have to know all these things.
Maybe should have done it down there, have a cardboard.
You don't want that?
Yeah, that's all right. I had a smaller one around here somewhere.
Roy doesn't hit things hard. He hits in the right place. He is very skillful. Very skillful. You move so slow you think he wasn't getting anything done, but every blow counts. All the straightening operations don't show, but you have to have things
You're
straight.
testing it to see whether it kind of wiggles.
Yeah, it works.
Do you miss this? Do you miss doing this?
No. No, I don't miss it.
What?
I have too many other things. Life's
Pretty much completed now.
life is-
Yeah,
right?
It's all but the finishing.
Okay. We can stop there.
It's hard to sand and make a nice job if it's curved surface, so you try to sand everything with a on the flat surface, and then you can hit it with the rubber hammer, and you don't hurt the finish. That thing isn't in the center there, but then I don't know why it isn't in the center. Maybe we made an error someplace.
Finishing it, and then ultimately.
Roy, why don't you sand that a little bit? Or I can do it.
Where do we do it? Right here?
Right here.
No, what did,
Okay.
I think I missed the lubricating part.
Yeah. Dad, put the
I'm sorry.
start again. We're gonna start again. She didn't get started when you put the lubricant in there.
Well, I'll put the lubricant on here then.
Okay.
What kind of lubricant is that?
That's mineral spirits. It just has a little lubrication in it, and it's if you sand it dry, it will. It gets white, and we call it burn the metal. So you have to have a little lubricant in it to keep it from burning the metal. I've got too much lubricant on there, just a little bit would have been much better. Now when you're done, cloth some. Give me a top cloth. This brings things together.
What's the size of this paper? What kind of paper is this?
Well, that's 220.
Emery cloth? Sandpaper? What is it called? 220 what?
Do you know, Roy, what the name they call this? It has a trade name on it, but it's called open coat because it has some talc on it or something to keep it from burning. But it isn't enough when you do aluminum because aluminum has a tendency to be more, it gums up more than. And we see if we had this flat, then it's trying to make it straight, I would use the sandpaper on this and we. If you have a nice smooth job when you sand, you get a nice finish, but we're not doing it right.
But you can take out marks and things that are...
Yeah, you can take out, you have to take out any imperfections. Now there's something that I don't know what it is, but it's, whether it's a blue mark whether it's just with some dirt on the aluminum to start with. If you take out an imperfection, that seems to be out. But then once you do that, then you have to would have to blend that in. I'm blending it. Which is almost impossible because you've got the shape in it. I think that's...
Then the next, do you do anything to the back?
Only steel wool. Used to sand the back, but the back gets marred, so we don't.
What's the final process that you do to put...
Now this goes ready to go in the fire. One of them. This operation,
Wait a minute.
we're just at the right place.
always have to make a new fire with fresh coal and wait until it starts getting red. See it start getting red. This yellow would be smoky.
How long does that usually take for it to get to the right temperature?
Well, it'll be all here. It'll be just a minute or two. It's almost there now. Have the screen. The fire can come through it. See the color change? Can you see the color change?
It's going from yellow to
red.
Is it more red now?
Yes, we're red now. It's just almost the place. Now cut down the speed.
And the purpose, you're trying to get the coal tar.
Yes, and the coal tar, when it first comes off the coal, it's almost like varnish. As it comes up in the fire, it changes to a dry black, and then as it goes on up farther in the fire, it becomes smoke.
You want to put it at the right level.
It has to be in the right place in the fire. If I was up in there, I'd be in smoke. If I was down close to the fire, I'd be in... That's just about right. It's dry. Give me the other piece. Now, if I was doing this in production, these pieces would all be flat. Now I'll show you what happens if you have it in the wrong place in the fire. Right there, maybe, I guess it's run, but you can see it run.
What?
See it stick?
It's stick or thick?
Stick. It sticks. Now if I put it up here like this, that's why it's in the fire.
Comes back off. It won't stick.
Comes all off. It doesn't stick. It's in the right place in the fire. Now if I put it down too low in the fire, see, it's gummy.
Too much on there.
Yeah, it's a different character. Now that'll all, well, it'll either be hard to get off, or else it'll come off entirely.
This is just right on this surface.
And that's just about right.
Would you put the finish on both sides?
I put this on both sides.
This process of putting the coal tar, where did that originate?
Well, that's the thing that Wendell-August thought they could patent. And they tried to get a patent on it, and they found it wasn't patentable because it comes naturally when you work. If you're working a bar and heating the bar while you get that on naturally, it's just part of the work. People have done that from the beginning. It's also true, you see, I can handle this. I put that in the fire and handle it. Now, I've had this in there several times, and it's so hot I can hardly handle it. In fact, it
Normally
works.
you wouldn't do it that much. You would be in and out and
Oh yeah, you have to
have
do
it
it.
going right.
The fact of the matter is, if it's cold, it works better than you know it's hot.
If the metal's cold.
Yeah, the metal's cold. Okay, that's it. Let's go over to the other table here.
I'm going to move right over here.
I love that stuff.
Now this is 4/0 steel wool, and I bought it from the factory and had the factory make it especially for me, because when they make it with oil. And if you have oil in, then it's hard to polish. But they can't do a good job unless they make it with oil, so it's kind of a combination. And what I wound up by doing was I would get it from the factory. Here's like this.
This is how you'd buy it
That's how I'd buy it.
in a roll.
Mm-hmm.
Then what would you do with it?
Well, then I would take it, and if it had oil in it, I would take it and put it in a dry cleaning bag like this. It's a dry cleaning bag, and I would take it to the dry cleaner, and he'd run it through his process and take the oil out of it.
Dry clean the steel wool.
Yeah, you dry clean the steel wool. Then you had a steel wool without.
In other words, the company that you got it from, did they eventually make it without the grease, or you?
Oh, they would make it, but it wasn't as good a quality.
So you bought the other stuff and degreased it.
Yeah, that's right. I degreased it myself.
And now this process, you would just take
You're watching me, aren't you?
you would take the smoke off, or the tow car off.
Yeah. You take part of it off. That's the trick, to take part of it off. Now, if you put it on real heavy, it sticks, but it...
And what's the purpose of it? To make the design show up better?
Yeah, we'll make it antique looking. And highlighting the design.
Would you do anything to the back?
Oh, you sure have to clean it off the back.
That coal tar, how long would that stay on there after you've done finishing it? How long does it stay on there?
It stays on there till you wash it off or scrub it off with a detergent or do something at home. So this is one of the things that is not very satisfactory. It makes it look nice when the people buy it, but it can't, if you use it, you lose it. I've never been very happy about the whole situation.
This process you would always do, though, after you shaped it. Or would you do this?
No, I do this before we shape it. Do it flat. Then you don't have the problem of trying to go up in the corners. You just do it flat. Everything flat. And then form it afterwards. You might have to touch it up a little bit afterwards. But you don't have this problem of trying to get up into corners. Now, you have to take a wad and you clean out the edge. I think I told you that, well, I told you that the edge that you made with the shear was a little rough, but by the time you work the metal by hammering it and it moves, and you hit it there, the edge is good enough. At one time, we would grind the edge off and make it smooth, but it was something you could do without. How about that other one, son? At one period too, we would use, if you got too much on, or if you got it on that heavy, you would use a wax with it.
Would the wax help it come off?
Yeah, take it off. But I figured that
Let
the,
me pick it up.
Pretty good.
I thought that the
That's
wax,
the way it's kind of, as you work it so that you see the outline of the design.
which is to me is the one of the secrets of a good design, that the outline is the most important thing of the design. When you're making a design, you think in the terms of the outline, because the outline is the thing that shows up at the end. And the outline is more important to the design than the interior of the design. Now, some other people don't agree with me with this, but this is my theory. That to make a good design, you have to have a good outline, perimeter.
In other words, it has to be pleasing, it has to be correct, it has
That's
to
pleasing.
be...
You have to have a pleasing outline and lots of outline. If you cut the whole thing, you don't have any outline. Now there's a spot on there where either it's been touched by a greasy hand, or for some reason the color didn't stick there too well, so it has to be blended in, but that's something that I don't like. I may go over there and stick it in the fire again, but that wouldn't do for production.
In other words, you would have it set up so that you would be doing a whole group of things all at once.
Oh, well, yes, that's the secret of making anything from a business standpoint, is to do it so that you have a production. Can't do it like we're doing and make any money. The name of the game is to make money. If you're in business, if you're doing it for yourself, like I do my things at my home, I don't care how much time I put on it. But it's always a matter of it's a matter of taste, how much of this you take off, too.
Who did you have do that for you? Who did that work? Who did the finishing work?
Well, Charlie Ray did it for years, and then in the end, Jimmy Vincent did. Now, Jimmy Vincent is a craftsman, but he liked to do this.
So it takes a certain degree of, well, a skill to know when it's ready, when it's done.
I myself always put the color on.
You were the color man.
Well, in later years, Charlie, who did
You were the
if
smoker.
you have one person who does this and the other guy who's taking it off, and they don't agree, well, then that's bad, see? But since it was my money, I tried to do it.
Your way.
Well, I tried to do it the way that the next man could do it efficiently and easily. Anytime where you have different operations and different workmen working on a thing, the man who's doing the one job has a tendency not to think about the next man. It's like in the building construction, you have the people bring the framers, put up the frame, and then along comes the plumber, and he cuts out the frame, and he gripes that the person who put up the frame, and then along comes the electrician, and he has to put in the stuff, and then the painter at the end, he says, well, those guys hadn't loused up everything else, and my painting job wouldn't be so hard.
But you tried to work it out so everybody worked in sequence and
Yeah,
got the
work
job
it out
done.
and work together. Now you see, you wouldn't have to do this operation if it was done flat. You wouldn't have these corners. You wouldn't have this black in all the corners. And when you go across, as I told you at the beginning, you have to go everything in the same direction. I'm violating that by going the other way because I can't do it, but it doesn't make for a good finish when you see, ordinary, you just should go up over the edge like that. That's impossible. These handles, of course, would be put on afterwards, so they wouldn't go through the fire and be a time-consuming thing.
As your business evolved, this particular piece was something you made early in your
Oh yeah,
in your
these
production.
handles were something I made early. I discontinued the handles. They were too much work. They're nice, but they're too much work. Now this is the one where I put that sticky stuff on, see?
So it's actually too much. Or it's
Too
the wrong,
much for a good,
too much, but it's the wrong chemical connection.
well, it's comes out of the fire, it comes out like this, and it goes into the dry area where you have a dry color, and then you get up to the top and you get smoke where you don't have any color at all. That's a little tricky. But if the thing isn't smooth, then you've got to work out these places where it didn't take. And
Is there any way that if the whole thing's a mess, to get rid of it all and start over?
well, you could take off
Is there
in
any,
a cleaning agent, take it, but you can't start over.
what was the wax? You said you could use some wax at one point.
Well, wax helps you take it off. But I don't like wax because after wax, wax has a tendency to get white and grayish. So when I did my own things, I just discontinued the wax business. But the wax is a way that you can speed up the operation because it'll take the color off faster.
In other words, it works as a solvent, somewhat of a solvent.
It is a solvent, yeah, the
What
wax.
kind of wax was it?
Well, what do I have?
Carnauba, is that a brand name of wax?
No, that's a type, a Carnauba tree excretes wax. I think in the leaves, I'm not sure, it comes from India or someplace like that.
What was it intended for, the wax? Would you put it on furniture or what?
Was mostly at one time they waxed automobiles all the time. And you can wax anything, it's a protective coat.
This was another one of these pieces we found, but all the time is kind of short. North Carolina somewhere.
I keep looking, I'll go to the shops and I'll see this stuff. Go to the South. They had some of this stuff over on Mercer. They wanted $55 for one of these plates.
Where at? Which place?
It was over at the Trinity Presbyterian Church.
And was it
This was before I kind of got involved in all this.
Oh, it's like a flea market type of time.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
during the Victorian days.
Oh, I see, yeah. Was it some of Dad's stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
now you see where I put that on heavy, it does a good job, and
Makes me look a lot
So
different
it
than what-
left here without that on it? It had to have been.
No, this is 40 years old.
So that then washed and.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, cycles, I found it in an antique shop.
so I sanded it at home.
Oh, okay.
And I took out all any scratches that were in it.
Register's
You need something.
clean a round plate, upside down round plate? This? Will that fit on here?
Big piece.
Yeah, that piece right there. See, this is what we did. Instead of making those sharp corner, this was the tray that we did afterwards. And you would take the piece of metal and lay it on there that was all finished, like I finished that just now, and then put this on, clamp it on, and form it, and you'd come up with a tray pretty similar to this, with this area in there, which now makes the handle.
Let's put it on here, how you did it. Just grab, in other words, the metal would be put on here like that, and be sticking out straight. What would you use to pound it over with?
Rubber hammer.
Like one of these?
Yes. You go ahead. You ought to
Show us how you did it, Roy.
show how I did, and give him 2 hammers, because this is something that Roy is wonderful at.
Here's one hammer.
Where's the other?
Here's another hammer.
You go ahead. You take it. When you hit this on one side, you'd have a tendency to just make it slip on the other side. So Roy would do it with 2 hands. He says he watches one and the other one goes automatic with the other hand. But is that right, Roy?
Okay, how would you get this corners in?
I think maybe that was the tool.
And what kind of a hammer would you use for that?
Well,
This one? Would you use one of these?
You take a hard hammer.
Kind of finish it off. Okay. And you would take it off of there. End up with the shaped tray.
without the handles. Now here, this is the handle material. Okay, show her that. That's an extrusion.
What's an extrusion?
This is an extrusion which I had made at the extrusion plant. They make it, I made the drawing for the die and they extruded it and I bought it in that.
You buy in bars like this.
Yes,
And this is what you use for the handles?
that's right. Here, we'll make a handle right now.
All right.
I have a saw here which isn't set up to cut aluminum, so I can't cut aluminum on it. Today, I'll have to cut the saw on.
You gonna do another one or just
Well,
one?
I'll do another one. I was
set this up with the stop and do it on this. Or I can play it.
It's not focusing.
Let me see it.
Oh, you make the right size.
Okay.
Oh, well, found a difficulty.
We ran into a difficulty.
I'm gonna cut them off. Just quick. Okay.
I thought I had to.
Ready?
Yeah.
This is what you use for the handle. This is extrusion.
Yes, that's extrusion. And this is a pattern which I kept because you don't have to measure them. You just use,
Use this to make
That's a
them.
measuring stick.
You cut them off all the same size.
Yeah. Set it up on the saw and just run them through.
All right.
Now this would go on there like that. But we want to hammer it and we want to bend it. You see that to have a more subtle shape, since this is not just square, it goes around here and has these more subtle curves on, I want to make this come up and go like that instead of being just straight, so I will
Do that? How do you do that? Or do you hammer these two?
yeah, I'll have Roy do it. Have you got the piece we hammer with there, Dory? Can you find it? I'll go upstairs and grind these and come down.
We can talk about this process. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you have to clean them up a little bit first.
Clean up the handles.
Yeah, just everything, you got to get the dust, the dirt off of them. Keep your hammer clean. See, what I did was grind them. Okay. Hammer them, Roy.
I'm used to hammering the other way. I don't know if I can do this or not. I can't remember how many we left. Can't see.
Yeah. Can you hand hold the thing and go on the other side?
Mm-hmm.
Do that.
I still can't see right. What's the matter?
Have to realize this is for posterity.
Would you do every row or every other one?
I stagger the marks. I can't.
Pull the,
Something wrong. I
switch.
don't know what.
Oh, the, what? Oh, there was the compressor, but that's the fan on the.
Would you do every line? Or you said you
I
staggered?
leave. I try to stagger them.
You can only go part way around because if you don't, you start losing your mark on the handle. And it isn't necessary to go all the way around.
You just do several of the
I
rows.
think we do. We'll do 4, Roy? You remember?
I don't remember, it seemed we left 3 on one side and maybe 4 on the other.
Okay, I think that's right.
We left 2 there.
I think Roy's got a better memory than I. Remarkable man. Yes, I think maybe easily 2 or maybe 3 years old.
I don't think it's wrong using a wrong hammer.
Which hammer, what other hammer would it be? Is there any difference
So
between?
it's flatter.
Flatter.
That's probably it there.
Okay.
That's not where it needs to go.
Did you do
Now-
both of them?
We just did one.
Do one?
Yeah.
Are you gonna do 2?
No, we're just gonna do the one. What-
Okay. All right, now.
How do you get the curve on it?
Huh?
You said you curved the handle
Well,
a
that's
little
what
bit.
I brought down for you. What do you do with that piece I brought down?
What is this device?
This is a bender to bend the